Everybody, today we're going to be talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi and speculating on what that series might look like. So there will be spoilers for Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, and other Star Wars material as well. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Script Department. I'm John. I'm joined today by Brad and Marcus to discuss Obi-Wan Kenobi, the upcoming TV series on Disney+. Before we get into that, if you haven't already, do check out our website, thescriptdepartment.net, for all the latest projects that we get up to with our global network of screenwriters. Also, check us out on social media. You can hit the links in the description, and you can find all of these episodes on Instagram. But you can also find them on our podcast. So if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for The Script Department and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. So I'm really excited about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think we all are. I think it's going to be amazing to see Ewan McGregor reprise that role, whatever he's going to look like. We got a taster of it just from the poster recently, and there was also a kind of a very brief teaser. They're calling it a teaser, but it's not really. I mean, it's more of just a kind of a sit down, very quick sit down with Ewan McGregor and Deborah Chow discussing a few kind of key ideas that the show might explore. But it's very, very hard to kind of pin down what that story kind of looks like. How are you guys kind of feeling about this show? Is this something that you guys want? Is it something that you feel we need, as, you know, given that it's probably picking up the mantle laid down at the end of the prequels? Where are we sitting on this one? Brad, do you want to start off?
Yeah, I definitely want it. And we totally need it, like, without a doubt. Like, it was going to be a movie, and then that got canned for various reasons. It is the Mandalorian was sort of the start of all of these new TV shows, basically. Even though now that is the blue ribbon banner, that's the main one. Obi-Wan he's one of the biggest characters in the entire franchise. Like, McGregor said he'd never do a big blockbuster movie, but then if someone asks you to play Obi-Wan Kenobi, you play him. Like, you do it, you say yes. So he's a big deal, and I think it's going to be sort of, he's a general, a battle-weary general in exile in a desert. It's going to be sort of Lawrence of Arabia-y kind of thing. I'm quite looking forward to it. I think there's a lot of legs on a concept like this.
Marcus?
For sure. Yeah, man, I couldn't have put it better. Like, it's so exciting. I'm thrilled. You know, he is, as you say, he's one of the biggest characters in the franchise, nay, the world. You know, this is one of those he's referred to. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm talking about, if I'm talking about a specific kind of character, then I will refer to an Obi-Wan Kenobi style character. You know, it is the mentor. He is that synonymous and that part of the zeitgeist now. And also, the times we've seen him on screen have been when he is kind of in full control. We've seen him as he's learning the Jedi art, sure, but he's in control of his faculties. He knows what's what. He knows his purpose. He knows what he's doing. And then we've seen him after whatever he goes through, and we've seen him then once again comfortable in his purpose. I want to see Obi-Wan unhinged, and I want to see Obi-Wan losing his mind a little bit in the desert and staring at the sands of Tatooine, trying to figure out what the hell's going on, chatting with his ghostly master, and him having that being the only company. You know, the kind of, it might be a little bit too much to ask from a Star Wars project for a deeply psychological exploration of someone like that, but perhaps not. I don't know. It's either way though. Yeah, I need it bad. I need it so bad. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be great.
How are you guys? How do you guys feel about the prequels in general, without getting too deep into them? Are you we know that Hayden Christensen's going to make an appearance in this. Are you? I don't know. Do you like the idea of kind of revisiting prequel territory here, because it's it feels like it's going to be doing a little bit of that?
Yeah, I mean,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they were. I think they've improved with time. You know, I think at the time there was a lot. I mean, I think we've had this discussion before that I'm not one of those Star Wars fans that hates the franchise. Like, if it's on and it's one of the big big events, I like to watch it and I'll enjoy it because I like the history of it. You know, I grew up with it. You know, I remember seeing it on TV when I was a boy, like, and then videotapes and whatever else, and it's it's a big deal. So I'm happy to see it, and I liked the prequels for what they were. So I can't. I mean, and even though it was the prequel Obi-Wan, you know, he was one of the most loved characters. Like the Ewan McGregor version of him, people loved that. If not, some of the people who hated it, who might have been the only thing that they loved out of the whole thing. Like he's a good character to bring back.
I go backwards and forwards on these things, like the in terms of the prequels, because I love them. I same as you, Brad. I, you know, grew up on them, and it's kind of how I came to Star Wars. Really, was through that. I'd seen the original trilogy, but you know, the prequels are kind of how I came to it. And then as I got a little bit older, I started really being annoyed by them because they're you know, for all the I'm not gonna sit here and slag off the prequels. There's enough people on YouTube doing that, like, but you know, and then as I got a little bit older, as you say, they kind of improved with time, a little bit of perspective. But the one thing for me that always stands out is the tonal difference and the style difference between these things. So anything for me that links those styles and brings it together and makes it feel like a one universe. So, you know, for example, the Book of Boba Fett Mandalorian episodes when we see the M1 Starfighter, I love that because you have then it makes it feel like it's the same world. It's a through line, especially in that particular sense, a really important through line that because of what those starfighters were in the Phantom Menace. Um, you know, it connects it, and it's a physical link between those two things. And also, I mean, and you know, Boba Fett himself, previously Jango Fett, is again that kind of link between those things. And so I think in this sense, yeah, an exploration of the prequels is got to be good. It's got to be good because it's kind of revisionist in a sense, isn't it? And it's less of an apology for, because I don't think you need to apologize for them. But it links it. It just brings the whole thing together and makes it feel like a shared universe, which has got to be good, right? It's got to be a good thing.
First of all, Attack of the Clones is my favorite Star Wars movie. It's the one many people will say is their least favorite. To me, it's always been my favorite, and it's the kind of hill I'll die on to defend that movie. I know it's got cheesy dialogue. It's got really the visual effects do not hold up in so many ways, in so many parts. But I love the caper story of that. I love how it's the most. If Star Wars is something inspired by old pulp noir sci-fi, this is the most pulp noir sci-fi show that it is, but it's also like the least successful at that as well, you know. But it's Lucas going full in on that, you know. Even the name Attack of the Clones is such a, I mean,
which they don't do.
Yeah, which they don't, you know. So it's
was Attack of the Clones Ninja Yoda? Was that?
Yeah.
I mean, who's like that? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's just, but I've always loved that, and I really love Ewan McGregor in that. I think he's brilliant in all those three films, but I love the relationship he has with Anakin there. That kind of burden. It's not a burden, but it is like he needs to keep an eye on this kid. You know, it's the older brother taking care of the younger brother. And I remember when I was doing my master's, I was having a discussion with one of the people in my class about Star Wars and about the prequels, and we were getting really nerdy about it. And he said, "Oh, the prequels are terrible because you can't not there's no characters in it. You can't boil them down, reduce them down to any kind of archetype. It's just a bunch of figures in the Star Wars universe running around, kind of chess pieces on a board, you know." And he was saying, you know, well, you know, Luke is the farm boy called off to war. Obi-Wan is in the original trilogy, he's the mentor. Han Solo is the rogue pirate kind of character. You know, that you can identify them. And I totally disagreed with it because I said, no, actually, the prequel trilogy is just about a brother and two brothers. It's one brother, it's the older brother trying to protect the younger brother through this war. And it might not be the most effective version of that kind of story that we've seen, you know, in cinema. But there is something really lovely about that. And I think that's the thing I'm really hoping to get out of it. You know, my favorite line, one of my favorite lines in Star Wars is when Ewan McGregor says, "You were my brother," at the end of
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah,
Mustafar
yeah.
battle. And I think it's one of my other favorite lines then is when Luke in Return of the Jedi says, I'm a Jedi like my father before me," because it's that wonderful acknowledgement of family. And it always it happens in the last moments of the last film in those trilogies, you know, and it's like the family dynamic has now is spilling over, you know, it's erupting. um you know, it's being built up
I think you
slowly,
get that
and
with
then it's kind of erupted, and the kind of result of that is exhaustion, and the star of the piece saying something about family, whether it's "you were my brother" or "I'm a Jedi like my father," you know. And I just think that's not coincidence. If it is, it's a big coincidence. But and I think it summarizes the real value of what Ewan McGregor brought to the table in that, because it's his version of that character that you're buying into. He's the
for sure.
survivor of that
I think
story, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's important also to note the Clone Wars. I think in this as well, because albeit not played by Ewan McGregor, but it's still Ewan McGregor's take on the character. You know, it's another actor taking on Ewan McGregor's version, and I think the what the Clone Wars really does is add a lot of depth and you know that kind of war bond between Anakin and Obi-Wan, especially then you then begin to see that in the final season and you know um the final season of the Clone Wars, which I just loved as well. The power, the way it ran parallel to Revenge of the Sith is just so smart, so clever. I loved it. And you know that moment where Anakin's been in the room and he's talking to Padme, and he comes out and Obi-Wan comes back along and they, you know, ha ha ha, well, fine. And he turns around and goes, "At least tell me you told Padme I said hello," or something like that. And he knows, and and he's good with it because they are that close, and they are brothers, you know, in every sense of the word, which I think really adds to that fall and that moment of desperation with when Obi-Wan beats him, and how interesting to now be able to revisit that
Mm.
probably in some way in this series, you know, and what form that will take. So interesting.
We'll talk about Vader and Obi-Wan and how that will play out kind of near the end. But I do hope, building on what you just said, I do hope that there is a line where Vader, rather than talking about him as the the teacher student kind of relationship, as they kind of refer to it in A New Hope, actually get back to
Mm.
that brother relationship, because I think that's a far more interesting one. You failed me as a brother, I failed you as a brother, or you know, however they want to look at it, however they, anyway, yeah. um Let's talk about possible storylines. I don't want to go too deep into this because I feel like the trailer comes out, you know, where it's going to be, you know, so there's no point in kind of spending too much time on it because the trailer will be due very soon, I think. But what kind of ideas do you think it could explore?
Oh my god! I mean, even just the characters that could come back to fuel those storylines is immense. Like
Mm.
it's huge. You know, whether it's like Kid Leia and Luke, Jabba the Hutt, Yoda, like Liam Neeson coming back as a ghostly Qui-Gon. We know Hayden Christensen's coming back. Could we get a Darth Maul, a Cad Bane? Like it's endless. Like the amount of people that you could get coming back. I mean, the main concept of him being on the planet is that he's looking after Luke. You know, even in the first time that we see them meet on screen, he just, you know, he sort of explains that he's there to keep an eye on this boy. And I think there's going to be a lot of struggle for him in that. So if he is exiled on this planet and he's looking out for this boy, if there's stuff happening, it's going to be exciting. If not, it's going to be, even though he's a Jedi, he's going to be really frustrated to be living in a cave or wherever he's living, hiding his Jedi-ness from the universe and just being a hermit, basically. It's going to be hard. So I think there's going to be a lot of internal conflict and turmoil within him as a Jedi who's supposed to be like chilled and like accepts every day as it comes. I think there's going to be an internal struggle within him, sort of trying to maintain his status as a Jedi, even though they don't really exist at this point. But there are so many directions that they could go with it. I mean, it's exciting just trying to think about them.
But that's such an interesting point, though, isn't it? That the Jedi don't really exist at this point in time, and looking at that wider kind of galactic, what's going on in the galaxy at this time. You've got things. Maybe it's hard to say exactly when in the gap between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope this fits, but around this time you've got the Solo stuff happening. That film, so that gives us all of those threads and Kira and Darth Maul and all this kind of thing going on. And I'd be very surprised, given that, given the way it turns out in Rebels later, in the connection with Darth Maul going right back to the Phantom Menace, if we don't see some kind of connection to that plot thread that was started in Solo, because it's a great idea, and because of for whatever reason the politics of Lucasfilm, we just haven't seen that yet. So I think it would be this is a great opportunity to kickstart that plot line. But the thing is, for me, in terms of where this might go, the only reason, because I think it has to leave Tatooine, and just looking at the plot line, the teaser that we saw, and the what am I trying to say, concept art that they showed in that, it looks as though we go off world and things like that. So fine. And also, there's no chance Vader's is setting foot on Tatooine, so we kind of have to go off world. And the only person I can see that will make that happen is Yoda, because he's the person who gives gives Obi-Wan the instruction to look after Luke in the first place. So for me, surely it has to be Yoda is that call to action, and he's the one that kind of says, no, you know what, you're okay, you can go off and have this adventure and take care of all this, that, and the other for now, so long as you then come back again in some form or another. Because how else is that happening? How else do you actually get him off that planet? Because of all of those things that you say, Brad, his Jedi training and everything, his patience, his inner understanding of what he's supposed to do. That's his job. And he wouldn't abandon that job for anything less, in my opinion, than Yoda. And then, perhaps connections to that wider galactic situation with the Solo stuff.
It was interesting you mentioned the concept art as well, because there was one in particular that I saw that was like, oh, that's interesting, which was the Inquisitors with the Stormtroopers. And those guys are going to be sent by Vader. That's what they do, right? They do his bidding, or that's one of their many jobs they do, but they're going to be doing his bidding. So they're probably going to be hunting his children. So that immediately is like, oh, that's quite interesting, because apparently Bail Organa is going to be back on some level. So, I mean, again, all rumor. We don't know this yet, but apparently he's going to be back. We're probably going to de-age Jimmy Smits, maybe sort him out a little bit. But there's going to be a hunt for these children on some level. I don't know. It's interesting when you try and compare it to the canon, because he didn't seem to know Leia was his. Is that right? Would you say that, or he wasn't aware she had Jedi powers? He wasn't aware she was strong with the Force. He didn't sense her. He's standing right next to her, and Luke does something. Half a galaxy where he's like, I sense something, and he's standing right next to Leia, but he didn't sense anything. So there's this whole, does he know? There's a couple of does he knows in this, because I don't even know if Obi-Wan knows that Vader's alive.
Yeah, I don't think. I feel like this is going to be the show where Obi-Wan learns that guy, Darth Vader. I mean, we've seen he's seen video footage of Anakin being christened Vader in Revenge of the Sith. He sees the footage with Yoda of Anakin kneeling down before the Emperor. He obviously knows he's Vader, but I wonder, does he know that Vader is alive? Maybe he thinks Vader's dead. He's been on a desert. It's not like he's getting the news. And as you say, Vader isn't ever going to come to Tatooine, is he? So I wonder, is this the movie where, or this the point in his life where he learns that Vader is still alive? And so
maybe he has to go and finish what he started.
I always had this idea, and I was so annoyed when Rebels came and kind of had this confrontation between Obi-Wan and Maul. But maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something. But I always had this idea that Maul in an attempt to get back into the Emperor's good graces, and obviously I think Clone Wars and all that kind of invalidates it, but he comes looking for Luke Skywalker, because what's better than Vader, a perfectly, a more healthy, let's say, Jedi that can be molded in the Emperor's image, and I always had like that kind of being the thing where Maul and Obi-Wan kind of get back into it after, there may be some kind of thing there where like there's value, they, like you say, they see value in Luke, and whoever wants to utilize that as a way to get Vader out of the picture or something like that, I don't know. But one thing, so I think the casting might be a clue here as to kind of where the story could go, because I'm looking at I've got an IMDb here. So Joel Edgerton, right? If I'm pronouncing his surname correctly. When he was cast as Uncle Owen, he was not a movie star, right? But now he's a movie star. Now he can be the star of his own Netflix TV series. He can be the star of his own Apple TV series. He can be the headliner of a movie, and has headlined many movies. All right. You can't. It must. On one hand, it must really annoy Lucasfilm when they're crunching the numbers. Like, can we afford this, or can we afford it? Of course they can, but it's like, if they want to keep the budget down, crap. Why did all the people in Revenge of the Sith suddenly become A-listers? Or whatever. Or why did this one guy have to become an A-lister?
He was on the screen for like a few seconds, right?
Yeah.
Like he was
yeah.
And that was done. And now he's going to cost them a few $1 million.
So why not use him? If you're going to bring him in, why not use him? It would be very annoying if you only see him as a flash in one episode and then they're off world for the rest of the series. Why not have Obi-Wan and Uncle Owen together? Give far more weight to Uncle Owen as a character, so his death in A New Hope has some more value. And when Owen is saying, I don't think he exists anymore, I don't think he's alive, is it because, like the show ends with Owen, or, Owen's last moments with Obi-Wan are one where he thinks Obi-Wan's dead or something like that, where you could really explore, these two unlikely allies, both bonded by, like, I know what good comes from working with Jedis, but I'll do it to protect Luke, and show Uncle Owen as somebody who really loves Luke. You can either go the road where he's like this grumpy old uncle who doesn't really, I got to take care of this kid. Go and clean the moisture evaporators, whatever. And instead he's like, no, actually, I would die for this kid. And if I don't want him to go off to the academy, it's because I've seen what happens when people go off to the academy, whatever that is,
Well, in A New Hope, that arguably the relationship between Owen and Obi-Wan is bad.
Yeah.
Like he does not like him, and that's great. Like, how do we get there from the guy who gave you your son to the guy? Don't go and mess around with that weird old hermit or whatever describes him as. But I mean, I
had a flick through.
Go on, Marcus.
Well, I was going to say I had a flick through one of the Star Wars comics that kind of has a look at Obi-Wan Kenobi and what he's doing on Tatooine. And it seems as though between sort of fighting sand people and sucking up to the Jawas, he tries to kind of deliver Luke parts, and he tries to give him things that will help him, kind of develop and things like that. And there's a great moment in these panels where I love it. There's like Obi-Wan, there's a knock on the door, Obi-Wan walks up to it, and he like summons his lightsaber from across the room. And for some reason, I just think it's really cool. I really want to see that. But anyway, I digress. But Owen basically turns up at his hut and goes, "No, you're not doing this. You're not corrupting this child. You are never going to train him. You're never going to do this. He's going to stay here and he's going to be safe because you told me to keep him safe. And that's what I'm going to do." So, that is kind of it. And that there are canon, comic books. So that idea of their relationship is very much there. And how interesting to build on that.
I think you could have a great drunken fist fight at the local bar between the two of them. Like, you could really go milk that relationship and just have Joel Edgerton and Obi-Wan just having great chemistry together on
Oh
screen.
yeah, it'd be in
sure.
that shitty biker bar that Tamura Morrison
Yeah.
like.
That has yet to.
Yeah.
But there's never been a bar fight there ever yet, because this is like 30 years earlier, and it's just.
But yeah, I mean, there's the comic books and I think Rebels have two scenes where Owen is attacked. In the comic books, I'll get them mixed up. I think in the comic books it's by Chrysanthemum, and Obi-Wan saves him, and in Rebels it's Darth Maul, and Obi-Wan saves him. So there's already this idea that Obi-Wan's looking out for Owen as well, because obviously there's a target somewhere around that family. Whether they're looking for the kid or whether they're looking for Obi-Wan. I say the kid, obviously Luke Skywalker, or they're looking for Obi-Wan, or they're
Spoilers.
looking, anyone that's connected. There is a duty that Obi-Wan will have to Owen as well as Luke. So it's going to be interesting, I think.
Let's cover the time frame, right? So I this is how nerdy I've been getting this last week, right? So I've been doing some research. If you look at the Inquisitors that are featured in the concept artwork of the teaser for this show, they are, if not the same, I think they're the same as the ones from the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Sorry, the Jedi Fallen Order video game. I don't know if you guys played that, but the Inquisitors play a big role in that, and you play as a kind of a Jedi, and a kind of a Jedi that's kind of staying off the grid, and that's set 5 years after Order 66. So, but that Inquisitor, I believe, dies in that game. So that would mean if that Inquisitor is popping up in this, then the show is set about 5 years after Order 66. But the other thing that I was curious about was what age was Alec Guinness when he played Obi-Wan in A New Hope? What age is Ewan McGregor now? And Ewan McGregor will be 10 years younger than Alec Guinness by the time this show releases. All right. So could it be set 10 years? Because it's 20 years of a gap. Could it be set 10 years before? So you've got enough time where he's aged into this kind of more grisly hermit character, but there's still that 10 years in your brain where he can morph into Alec Guinness. That it's not like 2 years before A New Hope or anything like that, or 5 years where there's no way he's going to age into Alec Guinness anymore. I know that's not possible anyway, but it's your brain can kind of sell you on that idea that he's still got some little bit of transition left, some room to transition into Alec Guinness. Because that's clear. That was show. Sorry, I was just going to say that's been the whole thing in the prequel trilogy was it's all about let's do impersonations of Alec Guinness, and he does them brilliantly. Mm-hmm. But that is what Ewan McGregor's performance in that show was. For a while, in those movies, it was just the kind of the kind of brush under the thing, or the quick lines, or the references. But I wonder, where do you think? Are we talking 5 years after, which would fit into the Jedi Fallen Order timeline, or are you thinking we're at the halfway mark where he's older, Empire has been firmly established at this point, and so on and so forth?
So I think the unofficial, almost universally accepted dates are 10 years after Revenge of the Sith and 9 years before A New Hope. That's it. I don't know if that's not been released officially, but that seems to be the sort of time period that everyone's talking about. And that I didn't know that he would have been 10 years younger than Alec Guinness, and that is bang on. That's like, oh right, okay, yeah, that really works.
So he's 50. He's 50 now. He'll be 51 apparently in March. I don't know. This is the level of research we do here. And then Alec Guinness was 61 in A New Hope. Though you could probably imagine he was 60 when he filmed it, I guess. But yeah, it is weird how these characters have always been ageless, haven't they? You don't think about their age in these stories, and now it's kind of becoming a bit real, isn't it? Actually.
I think it kind of has to be about that, though, doesn't it? It has to be kind of about 10 years either side, because it gives them, for my in-depth, grizzled psychological study that I want so badly in this, that it gives 10 years of desert isolation to be kind of to contend with, but also another 10 years to go. And and that means it's roughly, because this is the big trick, isn't it? Right. So I don't, the canon of this is that I don't know if Fallen Order is still canon, and I don't know what the hierarchy of canon is.
I think it is canon. I think it is.
Think it is canon.
Yeah.
Because I think that presumably the live action stuff takes precedent over everything else in terms of setting canon, and then you got your Clone Wars and your Rebels and things like that will be following up. I don't know how the video games kind of come to bear in that. It should all, in my opinion, should all be. But then the problem you then have is, are you tying your hands? Because if you're looking at it from a strictly canonical point of view, Vader and Obi-Wan shouldn't be meeting, because Vader says to Obi-Wan in A New Hope, when I left you I was but the learner, now I'm the master. So if they've ran into each other like 10 years earlier and they've had another fight, it does kind of take some of the weight off that. Or depending on how it's done, obviously, but I feel like it would kind of take away some of that dramatic weight. But if they can, or they're going to have to do narrative backflips to kind of, and they'll have to give him some kind of line like, but I am still right now the learner, master. And
I clearly have more to learn, it seems.
Yeah. Thank you for my final lesson. And I don't know. But how much does that matter? How much does that matter in terms of what's more important? Is it the story that we're telling now, or fitting into it? Because we've got story here, we've got story here, and somehow this has got to happen in between, whilst keeping all of this stuff there. It's so difficult to actually make it work.
I mean, there's a lot of plates spinning. There's a lot of plates spinning.
Yeah.
And this, if we're talking about canon, this area that we're in right now is a massive casserole of nonsense. There's so much going on, and there are so many places that you could trip up. I mean, they're going to have like continuity, professionals like on through every single step of the way, because they could get so much wrong, which for example, like the student and master, the learner and master sort of idea, like they can't smooth over that. They're going to have to tidy that up, because it looks like they last met on Mustafar, and then to be honest, the concept art looks like they're still on Mustafar of their fight. So I mean, it's either a flashback and he's remembering something else, or he's gone to Vader's tower to challenge him. But that still wouldn't make sense in the canon. But I think there's a lot. I think there might be a lot of secondary characters brought into it to revisit, so they're not going to break the canon. Like I had an impression
maybe
that
we'll get some back to tank.
Yes, some back to tank.
We might get some back to tank flashbacks.
Talking about the back to tank, I think there's room for Tamura Morrison in this show, because he was Cody, the clone general that backstabbed him, Order 66. He was Cody. He could be in this show.
No.
Tamura Morrison could be in this show.
Do you think they'll do that? They could
I don't know.
that. They could do that.
I don't know.
Tamara
I think
Morrison shows
the
up.
big
You widen to reveal the white armor instead of the green.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think it could be. Something could happen there. There is a canon with him in various other things that have happened that are canon, and they might break that. But because he's a small character, they might not care.
Imagine if the whole point of Book of Boba Fett was just to get you accustomed to Tamara Morrison.
Yeah.
Just remind you he exists in that universe.
And he's got that cool face scar as well in the
and they showed Kamino. They kept doing flashes of Kamino.
They did.
Oh man, if that doesn't happen, I'll be so annoyed
what a
now.
Theory.
What
a theory, bro.
The reason why I suggested 5, that's the best theory. I
love that.
The reason why I was suggesting that it could be 5 years is because if you go and do that duel, is there then enough time away from each other that they can still say last time we met, or I haven't sensed this presence since it's been years, like, whereas if it's 10 years ago, I mean, when I think I mean, I can't believe it's been 10 years since like I did certain things in my life, you know, and it's time does fly by, but it I just feel it definitely can't be later than 10 because then it's like Obi-Wan and Vader just have this, it's like a high school reunion at that point, isn't it, you know?
Yeah. Meet up every couple of years and have a fight.
Tonally, where are we going with this show? Because the this is the biggest star, as you said, established at the beginning, Marcus. This is Obi-Wan is the guy in all this. Vader is the one we all want to see as well. But Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan was like the standout character of that prequel trilogy, and he's the one thing I think we all agree on as Star Wars fans that just worked really well in those movies. It felt like that was Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, you might have thought, why is Samuel L. Jackson a Jedi? You know, or Yoda CGI flying around with a lightsaber? Does he even need a lightsaber? But I don't think they ever felt like they didn't understand who Obi-Wan Kenobi was. And it does feel like that's the one character that Lucas really knows his stuff on. When he was writing those movies, he understood the role. The role never shifted. He was always the mentor, you know. Do we go down a kind of a do we given that we have the respect for that character and the trust in Ewan McGregor's performance in that character, do we do something more daring with the show? Do we go darker? Do we have this be a more violent show? Is this for kids, or is this for the kids who watch the prequels that are now adults? Who's the audience on this? Because let's be honest, the kids who saw the prequels are now adults, and the people who love the original trilogy most are usually the adults. I think new generation of Star Wars fans probably gravitate more towards like maybe the J.J. Abrams stuff or whatever, the stuff they can probably relate to more. It does feel like that on either side of this series, there is an audience of adults, first and foremost, who, what do we think about that?
I for sure would want to steer it towards that kind of darker thing. I mean, I've already expressed my psychological thing, but I mean that. I really do mean that, though. I think it would be sick, and like to try and to explore that character in that way. I think you can only do that in with a darker tone, and you know, kind of taking this upstanding embodiment of what it is to be a Jedi, pull him down, smash him apart a bit, and then put him back together again. And I think because that's what happened to him on Mustafar is so scarring and so traumatic. And I think it's important to do that justice. I think it's important to explore that properly. And I think you can only explore that properly with a darker tone and with something, you know, if you get kind of a sanitized look at this, then I think it would be a bit of a shame. I do, because I think that realism there, realism in terms of Star Wars, but that psychological realism that could come about with that exploration, especially if, you know, if we're getting some back to tank flashbacks, or if we're getting some, you know, some meeting up with those people again, and those characters, those legacy characters coming in. I think you need that, and I think it'd be so interesting to see those characters put into something that's outside of their comfort zone. And also the idea that Obi-Wan says himself, you know, from a more civilized age. Well, that civilized age is gone. 10 years later, you are no longer in that age, and he's been holed up on Tatooine for all this time. So pick up this man who thinks of this golden age of Republic as a civilized age, and put him down into Solo, and put him down into the messy situation that's going on in the galaxy.
Well, I was going to say,
but it's not. But it's
sorry, no. Just you mentioned, you know, that kind of grittier approach. The most bloody that Star Wars ever got was when Obi-Wan Kenobi cut off a guy's arm, and in A New Hope, and there is precedent there for this to be this could be a guy who's comfortable with blood. You know, he's not afraid to get bloody, and he's not afraid to inflict serious bodily harm like go kill Bill on somebody, you know, if he wanted. And he does it. I mean, he has done that in movies, and it might, and he can say a more civilized age, but that everyone has their own version of what that means. And for him, it could be, yeah, I'm not going to shoot you because I'm not going to use a gun because, you know, my weapon is scarier, and I'm gonna, you
Yeah.
know,
I think it's really important to kind of to think about whose perspective this series is from as well.
mm,
Is this actually from Obi-Wan's perspective, or is this going to be, you know, is
someone witnessing,
somebody getting
yeah.
into? Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. You know, and are we seeing, you know, a legacy character popping up like Cody, for example? Because I just love that theory and I want it to happen now.
It's going to
You know,
happen. We're going to get more
come?
Morrison.
It's gonna happen. Come on.
So I think tonally it's gonna have to be dark, otherwise there's gonna be a mistake. So it's bridging the gap between the new and the old, or the first and the second, and it is going because we're using those main franchise characters in or becoming the versions of themselves from the original trilogy. So it's not Anakin from the prequels; it's Darth Vader. So that's an original trilogy character. It's not General Kenobi; it's Hermit Ben. That's an original trilogy character. You know, we're gonna have the Emperor. We're gonna have Emperor Palpatine. He's gonna be in it. Like we're gonna have all of the. So it's gonna lean towards the original trilogy, which had its darkness in places because it was all about oppression and, you know, the way that the Empire had taken the galaxy and the way that they were just destroying anything that stood in their way. We're going to be in that realm. Otherwise, there's something gone seriously wrong in their planning. It's like you can't have the jubilation of, you know, Phantom Menace and Naboo and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be there. You know, Darth Vader's it's going to still be mourning Padme. So we wouldn't have got that in the original trilogy because we didn't know who she was. But you know, there might be visions of her. We might get a little bit more of Padme in some way, shape, or form. Like he's still going to be mourning what happened, and you know, I don't know if it was ever talked about in the original trilogy, but I'm almost certain it wasn't. That, you know, the Emperor told him that he killed her.
No, that wasn't in the
You know,
original trilogy.
so
No.
that was in the prequels. You know, is that going to come into play at some point? You know, can they repaint his relationship with the Emperor? Does he find this out? Is that why
Some
he
great
turned
stuff
in
in
Return of
there.
the Jedi? You know, all of these
Yeah.
things, like they can repaint a little bit of the
biggest
backstory of the original trilogy.
the biggest issue I have with Return of the Jedi is that it doesn't even try hard to make the redemption arc work. It's just at the end of, there's no evidence at all to show that Vader is this conflicted guy who wants to kind of go back to the light. And but Luke just says it. Luke just abandons the mission on Endor and says, you know, I got to go find my dad because I know there's still good in him. And then he says it like, I know there's still good in you. And he says, it's too late for me. Like, well, where's any of that coming from? You're like Hitler's right hand man. And like, why are you like, where's this sudden, this kind of sudden desperation for redemption coming from? It was just very, very shoehorned in. I think maybe because they realized, oh crap, we can't actually, that twist at the end of Empire struck a chord, you know, maybe too heavily, like. And I would love if they used Vader in this, as you say, to show like that real sense of remorse, but I can't do anything about it. Like there is nothing I can do. There's no point. I've lost all my faith in the universe. I know I've made the mistakes. There's no reason. There's no point. But you could also have this thing where he's torn. Like you could, you know, the way his eyes kind of go red in Revenge of the Sith. You could almost do that thing where like there are moments where it's not as red, and so I know that sounds really cheesy, but it's just the Force kind of like you could almost have that kind of dichotomy of good versus evil internally with him, where he shows a moment of good, but then he quickly steps on it, you know, and those little seeds could be enough to then make you watch Return of the Jedi and go, or make me watch Return of the Jedi and go, yeah, okay, I see this now. I understand where this is coming from. I don't know.
there are elements of that in again referencing the comments.
We don't get comments.
They and we don't get comments. We there are moments of that. There's a whole arc. The whole Vader's castle was built in order because of some the spirit of a dead Sith Lord who had learned how to come back from the dead, and they were going to bring back Padme and stuff like that. And whether to the stuff that I'm not saying, hey, let's go do these live action comics, but there is some interesting stuff there that you can definitely draw upon, and in terms of the characterization of Vader there, when is that? When did that happen in relation to what we're about to see from Darth Vader? Is that still is that something he's reeling from? Is he still trying? Is this going on at the same time? Does Obi-Wan, somehow kind of ruin that plan for him? There are lots of things, and it comes back around again to that question on canon. How much emphasis do you put on different things? But it's going to be really interesting to see how they choose to walk that line, and what they draw from in terms of these legacy characters, and how we get them from where they are to where they will be.
I think with some of the legacy, the excitement of the legacy of it is that there's so many people alive in this period. So the ones that we've all seen die and the ones that just disappeared. I mean, there's even the really big stars that came in to do a cameo, like Mads Mikkelsen is alive. Werner Herzog, he's alive. Woody Harrelson's alive. All of these people are alive in this time period, and they were good characters. I know Werner Herzog was sitting behind a desk, but he was mean.
No, but he was real
terrifying.
Old school.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ever wanted that comparison to the old, the Nazi generals in their big trench coats or whatever, I mean, he looked that role. So he looked like that thing. He just looked like he'd been pulled straight out of Downfall, or one of those famous kind of World War II movies.
Then you got Forrest Whitaker's alive.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah.
So that whole
interesting. Yeah,
Jedda's still there.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff that still exists. It's
why are we assuming that poster is Tatooine? That could be Jeddah.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah.
Could be Jeddah.
Yeah.
Could be Jakku. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Cool.
We're looking backwards to the prequels and making links there, but could it actually solidify the sequel trilogy as well? Through this, because the connection to the prequels already there. You've got Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen. You have that connection's solid already, and the connection to the original trilogy is there because it's Darth Vader and it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, so it's already there. The kind of the kind of shunned child is the sequel trilogy. So what if it becomes Jakku? I mean, it's definitely Tatooine, but what if?
But if it's Jeddah, we're going to get some Donnie Yen.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not blind. It'd be even more badass.
Maybe.
Is that how we learned about the Force?
So
is
cool.
it? That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing that I think is worth exploring with Obi-Wan, he's got morality issues. He lied to Luke. He didn't need to lie to Luke. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world, is it? But it is a thing that Luke is slighted by that. And we do reference that, I think, when we talk about Obi-Wan and Luke and things like that. We do talk about that idea of him. And you've even mentioned it, Brad, in one of our discussion videos. He did lie to and Yoda as well. Now, yeah, to protect him, but also he did it nonetheless. Could you play into some idea where Obi-Wan, or could they play into some idea where Obi-Wan is kind of doing something a little dubious in order to what he thinks is best for Luke, what he thinks might be best for Leia, even if young Leia was a character in it, rather than protecting Luke, maybe this series he's protecting Leia for a few episodes or something. Is there some morally ambiguous line that he feels he has to cross, or doesn't realize he's crossing? I feel like they could really add another dimension to Obi-Wan's philosophies and his outlook and his point of view, as he likes to say.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if they definitely, the point of view thing I think is really important. Because that's his whole thing, isn't it? That's his whole vibe. Is what I told you was true from a certain point of view. He also,
Wait.
Forget
Did Ewan
lying
McGregor
to.
just come into the room?
I'm doing my best to do a Haggard
Do
Obi-Wan
Dumbledore.
impression over here.
Since we're on wise old wizards, go on. Sorry, Marcus.
I got a good Gandalf, but he from the point of view thing, but also forget lying to Luke as his greatest sin. He looked R2-D2 in the eye and told him that he didn't remember him. That is heartbreaking. That is absolutely devastating. That is Obi-Wan Kenobi's greatest sin, and I want to see that.
But I think his moral compass being questioned it fits. It's a desert, they could easily model it on the story of the temptation of Christ. The 40 days in the desert, being tempted by the devil, kind of thing.
Wow, yeah.
It could fit into that, because that's not the only story that does that. It's an age-old, ancient story about being tempted by a hero, being tempted by evil, and it's happened many times, and I can't see why they wouldn't do that a little bit. I mean, him questioning his loyalty to his religion in a way could be a big part of this.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so Marcus, you talked about Tatooine. It does look like we're going off-world on this, as we've mentioned.
Yeah.
Is it damaging to go off-world and then have him come back again? Like this whole, isn't he just breaking his promise to I mean, I don't think Yoda would approve. I mean, so can they make this work? Or is it going to feel a bit like, yeah, you didn't really do your best to look out for him, did you? I don't know. How does that work? I mean, or is it Luke gets kidnapped or something? I don't know.
Well, I think it's got to be something like that. There's got to be some kind of mover, and maybe Luke does get kidnapped or something like that. Though I just don't see. That. I think Luke is going to be a really small part of this.
I don't believe. Sorry, Shazam. I don't believe that that's happening at all. I think Luke is going to be such a minimal role in this because you can't just have Luke in every show. But I can't think of a reason why he would abandon his quest, to take care of Luke. Yeah. So sorry, go on.
The only thing I can think of is I mentioned earlier on Yoda, and Yoda I think is the only, or Qui-Gon, one of these two, Ghost of Qui-Gon. These are the only two individuals that I think could convince Obi-Wan to leave that planet. And so I can see a "Help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope" sort of call coming from Cody, please, and and then him kind of be him turning him down and saying, I can't leave Tatooine, I can't do this. And then, perhaps he gets a force video call from Yoda, and Yoda says, no, it's okay, leave you must. And and he's goes off on an adventure with Cody or something like that, or Qui-Gon says, no, you have to do this in order to protect. Perhaps Vader's all the Inquisitors are getting a bit too close or something like that. I don't know. Not to get
too clever, Marcus, but are you suggesting that, and I would love this, somebody is going to come to him and say, years ago you served with me in the Clone Wars? Is that actually going to happen? Is it going to be a second person come to him and say, I need you to help me because
General Kenobi? A lot of people remember him. He was a big time general. That'd be so great.
It has to happen.
No,
I'm going to be so annoyed if it doesn't happen now.
Well, you just made me think of something. Talking about Yoda. So Luke goes to Dagobah because Obi-Wan tells him, right? But this is after he's died. So did Obi-Wan have knowledge of Dagobah before he died? Does he know where Yoda is at this period of his life? Because he might have only got that ability after he died and became a Force ghost, and Yoda was like, hey, you're dead, I can talk to you now. Or does it happen before that and he knows where Yoda is? Because then it pulls into question the whole thing in A New Hope, where it's like, oh, the Jedis are all wiped out. Obviously he lies through his teeth a lot of the time to young Luke, so he might just be lying, but does he or does he not know that Yoda's alive at that point?
I feel like he does. I feel like at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Yoda tells him where he's going.
Does he tell him?
I feel like he does, because they're sat on that ship, aren't they? And I feel like they do.
It's yeah, I kind of feel like he might know, but I don't know
Yeah.
if it's actually explicitly stated. I do know it's I'm going into hiding. Or going into
Is it exile?
going to exile we must, or
Yeah, I
something like
remember
that.
that. I
Yeah.
remember that. But I just don't. I
Yeah.
don't remember him saying Dagobah. I thought it was like, "Bye, I'm going to go and hide, and I'm not going to tell you where it is." And then,
I'll see
yeah,
you when you've died.
Desert planet, you will go.
see when you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that
I'm glad you died, because I've been so bored here.
So
I
lonely.
have got so much to tell you. We've got to catch
Pull
up.
up
It's going to be
pull up a
great.
chair next to Qui-Gon there.
Yeah. I feel like if the Book of Boba Fett had stayed on Tatooine, it would be okay for Obi-Wan to go off Tatooine. But I feel as though, for some reason, because this is interesting. It's interesting that these two shows are happening next to each other, and it's interesting that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau aren't involved at all in Obi-Wan. And it feels like there's a weird scheduling thing going on here, and someone hasn't talked to someone else. Because there's that for me is confusing, and I wonder if that gets in the way of the wonderful Cody theory, because you can't have him. How confusing is that? That you've got, you've just watched this entire series with the same guy with the same. It's not the same guy, but the same guy with the same face on Tatooine. And actually, hang on, it's the same guy with the same face at the same time, but we're back in time, but we're on the same planet.
My theory is that Book of Boba Fett was the quick volume production we can do while we're killing time to wait for the pandemic to ease off, so our schedules can all get aligned again. I think the pandemic threw off a few schedules, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and so on, and it took a while for those things to get back on track. We need something. We can't do Mando season 3. Let's just do another Mando show in the meantime. I think that's why Pedro Pascal was there, because that was the most he was able to contribute. And had he been able to make more time, we would have just got Mando season 3, and Boba Fett would have been the supporting character. That's my whole theory on it. I think you're right. I do think there is a lack of communication here. You can't have two Tatooine in this show called Star Wars. You can't have two shows back to back on Tatooine. It's weird, I was surprised the poster leaned into Tatooine, because variety is what you should be trying to offer us here. Guys, just on the subject of legacy characters, we've talked about this already. Are we going to see potentially Padme and stuff like that through like dreams or flashbacks? Like Natalie Portman has come back to the Disney universe again with Thor. It wouldn't be a stretch, I think, for her to come back to be you. I think if you said, "Hey, want to do Star Wars?" she'd probably be like, "I don't know." But the idea of Ewan McGregor calling her up and saying, "Hey, come on, let's do a TV show together, or get the gang back together," I think that's not the. I don't think I could see her being like, "Yeah, okay, let's do this."
I think so. I mean, in flashback, it would make sense that you got Hayden Christensen coming back. He's not going to spend the whole time in a helmet or with like severe burn makeup on. Like, there might be a number of flashbacks with him younger, with his locks and everything, and Padme. They might be able to do a little bit of flashback exposition stuff to help the conflict in the show, and it would make sense having a star as big as Hayden Christensen to not have the helmet on all the time.
The reason why I've suggested it is because there is that line that doesn't make sense now in canon, which is Leia saying she has flashes of her mother. She only remembers flashes of her mother, and Luke saying, "I have no memory of my mother." Imagine, if Bail Organa was there, and we do get to see Alderaan properly for the first time. I think, is it? Maybe not the first time, but maybe first time live action. Where is it possible that there's Leia is seeing flashes of Padme coming to her in her dreams as a child, and it's just, maybe it's something that's, maybe Padme is the one calling Obi-Wan into battle, and it's like all Padme's contriving these things. Maybe she's got that Force Ghost thing going on. like very very lightly, very very briefly, but like, did you see what I saw? The woman, the mysterious woman, and so on. Like, you could do something very interesting there, and that could be the thing that makes Vader just turn off his lightsaber for a minute and say, wait a minute, what do you mean, Padme? And I don't know, I feel like there's room for that. It does feel like she would be missing from a show like that.
I don't know. I feel like I prefer I think her absence might be more weighty
Okay, yeah.
than her inclusion, because the absence of that character is kind of the thing that drives Vader, right? And so to include her, does that undercut that a little bit? I don't know. I'm saying that, but I like that idea. I think it's a cool idea. But I don't know. I wonder if the absence of her and the lack of Natalie Portman, What a weird sentence. The absence of Padme might be the thing that would do that. And maybe they do like an end game job, and we see like bits of the back of her head and stuff like that. And perhaps if Hayden Christensen's in Christian is in the back to tank and he's having back to flashbacks, or back to backs, I don't know, whatever.
We always call it, don't
we?
Back to the Future. I've said it before. It's Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, yeah. Then maybe she's always just out of reach. Maybe that's his torment, is even when he's living his best Back to the Future life, she's just out of reach at all times. It's a cloak around the corner. It's a flick of hair on the pillow, or whatever it might be. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, I mean, talking about legacy characters, there's the weird, awful ones as well that you could bring back. There's like Watto, Jar Jar Binks, Greedo. Like, they're all there. They're all there. Like, we need them more than we need Padme, I think.
As much as I think, I would love the what's the Tamara Morrison what's his character in Cody, yeah, sorry. As much as I would love Cody, I think we're far more likely to get Jar Jar. I mean, it is true though, isn't it? Because that the actor who played Jar Jar is now he's doing stuff with Lucasfilm again. I think he's doing like a kids TV show for Lucasfilm around Star Wars. Or it's like a Jedi.
Oh, that's cool.
A Jedi. I don't know. Have a look at it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I could totally see Jar Jar coming back.
Oh, yeah.
I could totally see that. All right. I definitely think we're getting the Emperor in hologram form. Lord Vader, please, it's time you went and did this or did that or whatever. It'll be like a mission briefing or something like that. But I definitely think we're getting him. Will we get Grand Moff Tarkin?
Oh, I hope not. I don't think so. I think that as good as the I liked the Rogue One thing, but we've just had deepfake Luke Skywalker. Let's just have some real people. Like I just don't think it's necessary.
Will we get a tour of the Death Star under construction? Or
possibly.
Or see the Death Star?
How long does it take to build them? I don't think it's that long, is it? They seem to build them in about 6 months, don't they?
But they were already... They started building it at the end of Revenge of the Sith, remember? And they make a point. The last time we saw Vader before Rogue One was he's inspecting the Death Star with Grand Moff Tarkin and the Emperor.
Yeah,
so I was just wondering, will we get that?
I don't know how long the Grand Moffs are around for, though, because, I mean, whoever seems to be in charge in one film gets, like, strangled and... There's another guy that steps in. How long does he have that role for?
You could do some cool political espionage using manipulating Vader or something like that to his will.
Yeah, I mean, is there going to be a Moff Gideon somewhere in there?
Yeah,
he could be in it.
I mean, guys, this is all cool, but it's getting in the way of my psychological desert picture, and I need that in my life. So. That's cool, but let's just have Obi-Wan sat in his hut. Thanks very much. I don't think we even need a lightsaber.
Okay, one thing is for sure, we are getting some deepfake CGI. We're getting some de-aging. We're getting some character being brought in using a body double or something. It's going to happen as sure as we're sitting here. Who is it?
I reckon they're going to do a weird deepfake child Luke.
Oh yeah, I
Like
kind of feel like that.
a baby Mark
Oh,
Hamill.
God.
Well, it'd be 10, won't he, or something like that. A child Mark Hamill. Like,
Would you do young Qui-Gon, younger Qui-Gon, because he wouldn't be? I mean, Phantom Menace was how many years ago now? Um,
God,
and
over
all those
20
action
now, isn't it?
movies
20.
have put a few grey hairs on Liam Neeson, I'd say. So
yeah,
you've got to.
Well, you can kind of hide him behind the Force
yeah,
Ghost
surely, yeah.
aesthetic, I
Yeah.
suppose. And that's probably there. If he's kind of a transparent blue thing, then I think you can probably get away with the deep faking a little bit more there without, because he's already a CGI creation, isn't he? So you can get
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
if you had to bet the farm, who is the guest? Who's the returning big guest that Twitter will blow up for?
Oh, God.
I would say Qui-Gon's a safe bet.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Qui-Gon's a safe bet. I think Ray Park, maybe. Like, as Darth Maul, like, possibly. Or
I'm going totally out there.
go on.
Totally out there. And I'm referencing my lighting choice, and I'm going Mace Windu.
I was
Coming
about to say Windu. Like,
I do think that's possible.
It could
yeah.
happen.
I think that's possible. Okay. I think that segues nicely into Vader and Obi-Wan. How much Vader are we getting in this show? Because I don't think we're getting that much.
I think it's a less is more kind of job, because the whole thing with Vader is that he created he was an icon created in barely anything. He was barely ever on screen. I think it's very much a less is more job. And I think that I think maybe we'll get more Anakin. I've got a feeling, because I'm sure that Deborah Chow has said something along the lines of, we're going to get Anakin and we're going to get Vader. And so maybe we'll get some more Anakin, with some shots of Vader in there and some bits and bobs. But yeah, for sure, less is more, I think.
I would almost expect we might have one of these dual storyline shows where it's majorly the protagonist, but you also get the antagonist. Like they did in Breaking Bad. I know it was a few seasons on, but they did like a whole load of episodes where it was just about Gustavo Fring, like his life and what he was doing while Walter White was cooking some meth, kind of thing. And it's we could get this idea because they're both equally as famous as one another within the franchise, so there's no reason we can't have Vader's struggle trying to find Obi-Wan and his children, as well as Obi-Wan's questioning his faith, kind of thing. There isn't. We could have both. I mean, it's an hour. They're all an hour long. Apparently, there's 6 of them, and they're an hour long. So we've got the space to have more than one main thread to it.
Do you think we're being trolled when they describe a battle or like a showdown? Because Ewan McGregor says it when he says, it'll be nice to see them clash, having a bash at the lightsabers again, or something. Something to that effect. Do you think that what we're really going to get is a training session between, kind of a one-up training session between them in flashback form, where hey, watch your footing, all that kind of stuff, and it's kind of like, maybe Ewan McGregor gets one, Anakin Hayden gets another one, and then I don't know, and then Mustafar is that actual final showdown between them before A New Hope. I wonder, do you think that actually that's what we're going to get? Because remember, in WandaVision, there was that whole thing of who's the actor who plays Vision?
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany says, "Oh, it was such a dream to perform next to this famous actor," and everyone went nuts speculating who's going to show up, and it turned out it was just himself. He was joking about it. Do you think, I don't think Ewan McGregor cares about towing the party line in terms of, I don't think he cares about that kind of stuff. I think he'd be like, yeah, it was great being able to have a lightsaber duel with Hayden again, even if it's just in flashback form. I think everybody's got this idea, and they've edited it to suggest that it's a Vader versus Obi-Wan duel.
But there's also the concept art, isn't there, of them fighting on what looks like Mustafar.
Yeah, but do you think that?
I think it'd be a weird choice though to go back there and fight. So there's also the option
that's
of,
why I mean,
where the Jedi are training and they're and where they question whether they should be angry or aggressive, and they have some sort of like horrible hallucination, like Luke's cut his own head off on Dagobah. Is it one of those? Is Obi-Wan having this terrible, you know, is questioning being a Jedi, and he has this sort of flash. It's not even a flashback. It's like a hallucination of something. Is that him fighting Vader? Do they have I can't remember what is it, a bridge? I know they said it was the Force connection where they can contact one another. Is it something to do with that? Because it feels like a weird choice to go back
The
to where
logic,
they
the
already had the
logical
fight.
choice, the logical choice is if you want to preserve the story and preserve A New Hope and stuff like that, and the kind of the value of their showdown there, is you just have it as this was just a flashback. Another perspective on Mustafar and some training sessions with, when they were all young and handsome or whatever. You know what I mean? And then you've preserved it. But I think all the fans just want another.
Yeah.
Let's open up those lightsabers.
But that's the thing. I think there's a power in withholding that though, because yeah, it'd be fun to see them, smash at each other with some lightsabers again. Of course it'd be fun to see that, but I don't really know what that would do for the story and the overall kind of thing. I think that, again, kind of a less is more sort of thing I think would be better. It maintains those timelines, and I think that in terms of the characters, there's an elasticity, isn't there, between the tension that you build up by keeping people apart. I think is more powerful than kind of making them come together like that. That would be my thought anyway. And but ultimately, if you ask me, you get them in a room with a therapist, you sit them down, and you do some restorative justice. It's nice, and it's
some
psychological.
mindfulness.
Let's just have that. Yeah, lovely.
Love it. Okay.
I'm obviously joking.
Here's
Don't do that.
here's a question though. Okay, you mentioned when we were putting some notes together for this, you mentioned a really good point. Are we letting the rules of the series to date dictate how these shows get made? Or we can't have them do this because that might affect that line of dialogue in that movie and so on. Given the kind of departures that we've seen from the original trilogy over the last few years, and given how the original trilogy now represents a tiny minority in the overall, a tiny fraction in the overall scope of the Star Wars universe now. The Clone Wars was the beginning of one movie, the end of another movie. And now it's an entire season with more hours of television in it than all of the rest of Star Wars combined, I would argue, easily. And to many, it's some of the best stuff there. Do you think, that's just an example, but the point I'm trying to make is, do you think that Lucasfilm, without, and I don't mean in a kind of antagonistic way, do you think they care enough about the original trilogy anymore that it's like, well, we'll just do what makes for great television now, forget what the movies dictate in the past? Obviously, they're not going to rewrite the rules and have like Luke Skywalker walk off into the sunset with Obi-Wan Kenobi and learn the truth about his father or anything like that. They're obviously not going to do those kind of things. But do you think they'll just go hell for leather with a lightsaber duel and forget what that line of dialogue suggests in A New Hope,
I don't think they'll do it without thinking about it. There'll definitely be a lot of heated conversations in rooms or Zoom rooms, depending how it works at the moment. Like it's not going to have gone undiscussed as an issue, but I think it's like I was saying, it's probably going to be minor characters they're going to piss about with rather than change the arc of or what they can change the arc of a character but not break the canon. I think breaking the canon's the issue, isn't it? So they probably won't break the canon of any of the big characters, but little ones they can piss around with those.
For sure, I think it's a really interesting question, because the you look at the Star Wars fans. It's always been a lot about canon. What is canon? What is not canon? Especially with the Disney takeover and the creation of Legends material and things like that. So it's kind of a hot button issue with Star Wars, and has been for some time, and is with science fiction and fantasy anyway. But I don't have an answer in the sense of, should it be important, should it not be important? I think the fact is that for most fans, it is important. And I think that, you certainly look at a lot of the Star Wars devoted YouTube channels and, social medias and things like that. They create entire, careers out of looking into the canon of Star Wars and things like that. And it was interesting, while the Book of Boba Fett was going on, I was watching a few of these particular channels, and they're kind of making claims about, well, maybe this person could come and this person could come and this person could come. And I'm sat there, kind of, again, as we were while watching the Book of Boba Fett, with trying to balance this duality between, filmmaking professional and Star Wars fan, because actually I just want to see something new at this point in time in Star Wars. I want to see them do something interesting. That I want to see the Boba Fett, gangster movie on Tatooine. I want to see the Obi-Wan, introspective, whatever. Like, but but the point is that I kind of want to see something new. And so there's a part of me that's like, well, damn the continuity. Let's just do something interesting. But you can't, because it's all part of one shared world. It's all one continuous story. So you can't just abandon that stuff. So I think the answer is, yeah, they have to keep an eye on it, and they have to maintain it as best they can. But I suspect there's a line, and I suspect that your comic books and your lesser known TV series and lesser known video games and things like that will be dumped off very quickly in favor of a dramatic reveal.
I've got really, really, yeah, I really like your take on that. Actually, just damn the continuity. If it makes for great television, then let's just do it. I think is yeah, they're not going to be so careless as you say, Brad. They'll have discussed certain things. But I do feel Star Wars is one of those franchises that's very tied up in itself. And yeah, it'll be interesting. One final question, then I'll hand over to you guys for final thoughts. I did have this question: are we done with the Star Wars stories now? Because this was meant to be a Star Wars story originally, like Solo and so on. But I think the answer is yes, we are done with that. But I think a bigger question: are we done with Star Wars movies now? Because streaming is obviously where the money's at for a lot of stuff. I mean, Spider-Man No Way Home would suggest otherwise, but those are rare exceptions. Not every Marvel movie breaks the box office like that. And Star Wars has had a very unfriendly run it hasn't had a pretty run at the box, in movie theaters for a long time. Let's be honest. It has been for every fan for those movies is an equal critic of those movies, and to take someone like Ewan McGregor, who I know he's done a lot of Netflix stuff, a lot of television shows, but I mean, this guy, he's a guy who will live and die on the big screen, right? That he's a movie star in every sense of that word, and he's a film actor in every sense of that word. And to take that, one of the most iconic characters from one of the most iconic pieces of cinema, and to do that as a TV series rather than a movie event, I think speaks volumes about what their vision is moving forward. What do we think? Like, are we done with Star Wars movies moving forward, or what do Star Wars movies look like now when Luke Skywalker is appearing more in television than he is on the big screen these days, and he's got a better chance of survival on in television anyway. He's doing more interesting things, arguably. And I don't think we've seen the end of Mark Hamill on our television screens, So I'm kind of waffling here, but what are we done with Star Wars movies?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of goodwill to be regained from Star Wars movies. As you say, it's been a little unfriendly, and they are the Star Wars films that have been made since the original trilogy are at best controversial. And that's not me voicing any particular opinion on that. But they are divisive, and so I think that Lucasfilm are most likely looking at this and going, well, hang on a minute, we need to take a break from this, and we need to kind of consider what sort of story we want to be telling on the big screen. And in the meantime, we've got this really great thing, this goodwill going from The Mandalorian. So let's capitalize on that, and let's make these long form stories, and let's do Star Wars this way. And then eventually we're going to have a really great idea for a film series. And then in a few years' time, when the dust has settled from the divisive Rise of Skywalker, then we can maybe come back to the big screen and people will be so excited that Star Wars is back on the big screen that maybe we'll have a No Way Home event on our hands. That, I suspect, is what they're doing. They're biding.
And what kind of statement would that make as well when you've been doing like your Obi-Wan show and all that kind of stuff are on television, but this thing is going to be on the big screen? Like, imagine, like, people would be like, okay, wow, they've got something here they want to say, I guess. Yeah, I could see value in that. Yeah. Sorry, Brad.
I think it's interesting because they're closer than they've ever been, film and TV, at this moment. But as far as budget and ideas and commitment is concerned, they're closer. You could look at a few episodes of The Mandalorian. If you didn't know what it was, you'd think, oh, that's a film, because it looks like a film. It feels like a film. Obi-Wan 6 1-hour episodes. That's like a 6-hour film. It's probably harder to make than a film. Like, it's going to be more expensive if it's up to the same standards. But I don't think that means we're not going to get any more films. Like, Star Wars was born at the cinema. Like, Lucasfilm and Disney were both born out of feature-length films. They are they're film companies, and they're making film-level television. So I think that means they're going to make more films as well. Like, I can't see it not happening.
The reason why I asked that question, though, is because Star Wars may have been born in the cinema, or our discovery of it may have come from cinema, but Lucasfilm was always inspired by television. And that's why it's always had that episodic feel to it, is because it was always inspired by those Flash Gordon serials that he grew up on a Saturday morning. And it was, the crawl sequence and everything. If you missed the last episode, this will fill you in on the latest episode, or on what you missed. It's that crawl sequence isn't a trait of cinema. That's a trait of television. Previously on Star Wars, that's what that is. And I think we forget that from time to time. That's the reason I asked it. I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is that constant struggle in Star Wars between, it's framed as television, but it's trying to be cinema. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But when it works best, it seems to be television. And I wonder, is it only now, is the streaming revolution allowing Star Wars to find its home in what it was always kind of presented as? I don't know. That's just my...
I think if it will undoubtedly come back to cinema eventually. I have no doubt in that, just because of the money that can be made and the spectacle of that. And I think it's just a case of figuring out exactly what they want to do there. But I think you're right. I think the home of Star Wars is firmly the home of Star Wars is Disney Plus, isn't it? And that is very much that streaming service, and it feels like that. And it sits well there next to the likes of Marvel and things like that. These long form, narrative structures, as it were, and that now cross between. Marvel's doing the same thing now, crosses between television and film. And it's. I think they are moving with the times wisely, I would suggest, and they're looking at the future and going, well, hang on a minute, maybe this is not only where we get the best critical response, but also probably where we can make the most money in the long run. And so why would you not? Why would you not stick to the thing that's working? Don't know.
Final thoughts, guys, about Obi-Wan Kenobi?
It's going to be great. We're going to get lightsaber battle between him and Darth Vader somehow. I don't know how, whether it's real flashback or whatever. It's going to happen, and we're going to see Jar Jar Binks and Cody in the same scene. It's going to happen.
And Jar Jar will be the therapist, and Padme will run right in between them and say, "Guys, don't fight." And anyway,
love is the true answer.
And Yoda is just waiting for everybody to die so he can have friends and
I know, chat with everyone.
You're just so lonely.
Sports video call.
Yoda is so lonely.
I'm pumped. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be whatever form it takes. I think I'm more excited for this particular project than I have been excited for most things for a long time. And I adore Ewan McGregor as an actor anyway, but his role, the way he took on this character and reworked it for those prequels, I think is stellar. And to see him stepping into that again, I just think it's just going to be great. And whatever happens, I'm excited to see it. And so long as I get at least one shot of him looking out of the desert, possibly at the twin suns, and sighing, then I'm happy.
I have a feeling the trailer will probably be Force Awakens level of hits in terms of the I read an article once when Force Awakens came out. The biggest movie event of 2013 or whatever it was the Force Awakens trailer. It wasn't a movie; it was a movie trailer, and I would argue that's the level of excitement that we have for this trailer as well. And I would say this is probably going to be the biggest thing this year in terms of movies and television, I would say. I don't think it'll be the biggest in terms of critical response or audience or, maybe numbers or anything like that. But I do think in terms of all the trade journals knuckling down on writing their articles about this, I think in terms of social media attention, hashtags, all that kind of stuff, memes, I think in terms of pop culture, I don't think it's going to get bigger than Obi-Wan Kenobi this year. I don't know. That's my take.
I think you're right.
Because just for what it represents, I think it's not about what the show will give us; it's what the show could be giving us, and that's half of what our conversation was.
For sure. I really enjoyed you listing social media things then as well. That was really terrific. The memes. Perhaps it'll give us memes. I just enjoyed that. As a side note, that was
think
fun.
about what Grogu did for social media.
Oh my goodness, the Boba Fett memes have been incredible.
Yeah.
There's been so many of them.
We're gonna get so much of that because there's already so much of that from Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan anyway. It's just going to be a huge pop culture event, I think, and it's kind of slipping in under the radar a little bit, isn't it? The marketing isn't ramping up. It doesn't feel like it's ramping up. It will, obviously, but it doesn't feel like
perhaps
it is.
Because it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
Perhaps because it doesn't really need to at this point. It's Obi-Wan Kenobi back on a screen.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Marcus. We'll definitely be doing a weekly series about this anyway. We've started a playlist of Star Wars discussions. Right now it's just this and Boba Fett, but we're definitely going to, I think, keep the ball rolling and keep doing some more Star Wars discussions, maybe the prequels, sequels, original trilogy, Clone Wars, Rebels, all that kind of cool stuff, because I think there's so much we can jump into without speculation and actually just get stuck into it. We'll be back again with another video soon. Thanks for listening. Do check out our website, scriptdepartment.net. Hit us up on social media. Links are in the description. And subscribe to the podcast and give this video a like as well. And leave in the comments what you think Obi-Wan Kenobi will look like. Thanks very much, everyone.